Hi, this is your attorney, Ji-won Lee. Today, I'd like to introduce virtually everything you need to know about the changes in the newly enacted Housing Lease Protection Act. Some of you might be familiar with the word 전세, that's rent deposit when you rent a house. It's a distinctive contract method that only exists in Korea, in which the tenant puts a returnable deposit to the landlord instead of monthly rent. Of course, the tenant and landlord may agree on either 전세 or monthly rent, or even combine the two methods by putting a rent deposit in part and paying monthly rent. This rent deposit will be returned to the tenant when the lease contract expires. Now, the reason why I introduced the rent deposit is that there are quite a few problems related to that payment method, and the main features of the new Housing Lease Protection Act enacted in July 2020 deals with issues related to this rent deposit contract. Suppose you are the tenant. Here's how the lease contract by rent deposit worked in the past. When you sign a rent deposit contract, the contract period is 2 years and you have to renegotiate the terms every 2 years. In this case, the landlord may demand an increased deposit as much as he wants, and you may either accept the new term or move to another place. In this case, the tenant must be in a weak position because the landlord has the upper hand to decide the rent deposit. So this is why the new law has been legislated. Currently, under the new Housing Lease Protection Act, the tenant has the right to extend the rent deposit contract for 2 years, even if the landlord does not wish to extend the lease contract. In addition, when the tenant's request extends the lease contract, the landlord cannot raise the rent deposit over 5% of the current rent deposit. Therefore, the new law protects the tenant for 2 more years according to their choice without worries of sudden rise of the rent deposit. However, there are some exceptions that the landlord could choose to refuse the extension request by the tenant. The most often used excuse is when the landlord notices the tenant that the rented house will be his or her primary residence. Other reasons include payment overdue up to 2 installments, when the tenant seriously damages the property maliciously, when there's a plan for the reconstruction business in the area, and so on. Well, in these cases, the landlord is blameless. However, the problem is that some of the landlords are using this exception to deceive the tenant and find a new tenant and sign a new lease contract with a much higher rent deposit than the previous one. This is obviously illegal. However, since it's quite difficult for the tenant to catch and prove the landlord is lying, such cases are constantly reported in the field and are predicted to increase more in the future. Therefore, if the tenant somehow reveals that the landlord lied in order to make the lease contract expire, the tenant must demand monetary compensation by civil lawsuit. In this case, the tenant can be compensated with the option that he or she may choose: money that is equal to 3 months of rent, monthly rent the landlord acquires from the new tenant, or the damages the tenant suffers. If you have any further questions or are already struggling with any legal issues related to lease contract, please feel free to contact me below and I'll be on your side. Again, this is your attorney, Ji-won Lee. Thanks for watching.